is up, everybody? My name is Pauper Player, and today we are going to be unboxing Walls Combo, a 4-color combo deck, our first combo deck on this channel. There were a couple different decks I was considering opening this week, but this one caught my eye and I just really wanted to play it, so we're playing it. This deck's also a little bit more special than some other decks because this deck has like a whole community powering it. There's an entire Discord that I'm now in with other people that just talk about Walls Combo and how they can just make it better. What this means is that the version I'm showing you today may not be the definitive version in the future. So if you're interested in being in the Walls Combo community to try to help the deck improve as time goes on, I'm gonna go ahead and link that Discord down below so you can come and hang out. The version of the deck I'm opening today is by apass72, a really active member of the community. I think he actually made the community, I have no idea. But let's go ahead and get this open. As with every deck that we open up on this channel, which you could see the playlist for the other decks down in the description below, we're gonna be sleeving the cards in Dragon Shield sleeves. I decided to go with mint color. I don't know, there's a lot of green and blue in this deck, so that just made me pick mint. And then we're also going with the Ultimate Guard Boulder to store our cards. This is gonna be our deck box of choice. What if I just one packing peanut at a time dug this out? How long do you think that would take? Too long. There we go. See, what you guys don't know is that after I'm done pouring the packing peanuts, I then swipe them all to the ground because I don't want to deal with them now. And then that creates a lot of cleanup for later. There's a lot that goes into the production of these videos, okay? One day I'm gonna hire a packing peanut cleaner. So for those of you that don't know what a combo deck is, a combo deck uses a very specific set of cards to basically just immediately win the game. What I mean by immediate is that once the player has the cards that they need on the field, they're able to just win the game there and then. So in order to properly talk about this deck, I'm gonna have to show you guys what the win conditions of this deck are, the win conditions being the cards that make up the combo, because the rest of the deck are just supporting pieces to get that combo faster. So first things first, let's go ahead and mire my 187th Goblin token. I'm gonna go ahead and separate the sideboard, and then I'm going to put the win conditions on top. Okay, so I know doing it this way kind of breaks the integrity of what it means to do an unboxing video, which is to just raw open everything, but for the necessity of educating people about how this works, this has to be properly organized and talked about in a very specific order. So let's go ahead and get started. The goal with the deck is to create infinite mana for Valakut Invoker and Secret Door. Valakut Invoker costs 3 mana, red mana and 2 colorless. For 8 mana, Valakut Invoker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. The thing is that this is an activated ability, so you just pay 8 mana and you can do this at any time. So the next win con is Secret Door, which costs 1 blue mana, and then for 5 mana, you can activate it and venture into the dungeon. So there are 3 different types of dungeons in Magic, and when you enter the dungeon, you enter the first room at the top. Now, every time you venture into the dungeon, you go into the next room until you complete that dungeon. And then once you complete that dungeon, you can start a new one. So essentially what you do is you take your infinite mana with Secret Door and you keep activating it over and over again. So you keep going through the same dungeon over and over again. And then you keep doing one of the effects that will eventually kill your opponent. So the key card in creating infinite mana in this deck is going to be Axebane Guardian. For a green and 2 colorless, he has Defender. When he's tapped, add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is a number of creatures with Defender you control. Hi, Editing Joel here. I forgot to mention what Defender was. Defender is a keyword that basically means that your creatures can't attack. This is where walls come from because most creatures with Defender don't even have any power to them. It's usually like 0 power and like 3 or 4 toughness, which just makes them good blockers. I just thought I'd mention that. That's what Defender means. This deck has a lot of cards with Defender, so you're not really attacking a lot, you're just using them to produce mana. So anyways, back to the video. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to have some effects that allow us to untap Axebane. So we will tap him for mana. Ideally, we'll have 2 or 3 walls out. So we'll generate like 4 mana from that. X will equal 4. And then we'll use one of those manas to untap him. And then we'll do it again. And then you can just do this infinitely. And I'll explain that a little bit better in a second once we get to those untap effects. But we're running 4 of these. So next up, we're going to be talking about our untap effects. So Galvanic Alchemist is 3 mana, has Soulbound. So you may pair this creature with another unpaired creature. When either enters the battlefield, they remain paired for as long as you control the both of them. So what this means is that you can either just play Galvanic Alchemist alone by themselves, and then when the next creature comes out, which would be Axebane Guardian, you could Soulbound them together, so now they're connected. Or vice versa, you can have Axebane already out, and then you could play Galvanic Alchemist, and now they're connected as well. So as long as Galvanic Alchemist is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has has for 1 blue and 2 colorless, untap this creature. So in order for this combination to work, you'd have to have Axebane Guardian out and at least 3 other walls. That way, when you tap him, he'll tap for 4 mana, and then you can spend 3 of that mana to untap him, tap him again, for 4 mana, spend 3 to untap him. So this is something that you would then just tell your opponent, I'm going to do this infinitely, because if you want to count to infinite, you can. And then the only other thing you gotta do is just declare the colors that you're making with Axebane Guardian. You just say you might create some red so you can play Valakut Invoker. And then with all the mana that you generated with Axebane, you can then just keep activating this over and over and over again. The other thing about this activated ability is that your opponent can respond to it, but then you can activate it again. So that's the cool thing about having infinite mana. So if you say, I'm going to pay 8 mana to deal 3 damage to you, and they say, in response, I'm going to lightning bolt your Valakut Invoker, you can then say, okay, well, in response to your lightning bolt, I'm going to reactivate his ability 648 more times, because that's how the stack works. Your opponent can respond to it, but because you can activate at instant speed, they're basically dead. And by the way, because this is a combo deck, if I'm not explaining it super well or you get lost at any point, please just let me know down in the comments below. So next up, we have Freed from the Wheel, which is just a better Galvanic Alchemist. And what this does is for 3 mana, 1 blue, you can enchant creature. So you'd have to have Axebane Guardian already on the field. You'd cast this, enchant him with it. And this has, if you pay 1 blue mana, you can tap the creature. For 1 blue mana, you can untap the creature. This card's basically exactly the same, but because its untap effect costs only 1 mana to activate, you only need to have 2 creatures with Defender on the field in order to make infinite mana. So these are all the key components to making this deck win. We're only playing 1 Freed from the Wheel and 1 Galvanic Alchemist, and we're gonna go ahead and put those to the side, because now what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about all the support cards in this deck. So first up, we have Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort, which is a red and 2 colorless, Defender and Reach. And what Reach means is that this is a creature that can defend creatures with flying, even though it doesn't have flying itself. So it's good at blocking things like fairies. And creatures you control have haste. Now this is super important. What haste means is that it allows creatures to be able to attack and tap on the turns they come out. Typically speaking, Axebane Guardian, if you were to play him, you would not be able to tap him on that turn. But if it's like, let's say turn 5, turn 6, if you have Tuk Tuk on the field, the turn that you play Axebane Guardian, you can immediately tap him to create the mana that you want. So Tuk Tuk is not necessarily a win condition. You can obviously win the game without having Tuk Tuk out, but he does make the combo happen a lot faster if you have the right cards out. So we're only running 1 of those. Next up, we have a Drift of Phantasms. This is a defender, 0/5 with flying, costs 1 blue and 2 colorless, and this card has Transmute. So Transmute is a mechanic that where you spend 3 mana, in this case it's 2 blue and 1 colorless, you can discard this card from your hand and search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as this card, reveal it and put it into your hand. So if you have Drift of Phantasms in your hand, you could spend 2 blue and a colorless to discard it, and then you can grab pretty much any of the combo pieces. You can't grab Secret Door, but whatever. You can grab Valakut Invoker because that's 3 mana. You can grab all of your Axebanes because they're 3 mana. You can grab your Feed from the Wheel because that's 3 mana. You can grab your Galvanic Alchemist because that's 3 mana. If you really need to, you can grab your Tuk Tuk for 3 mana. So very rarely are you ever casting this card. You're primarily just using it to go and fetch your combo pieces. So we're going to go ahead and put those aside. We have 2 of those. Next up, we have Shield Wall Sentinel, which is a 4 mana defender. When Shield Wall Sentinel enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with defender, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So this card's super sick. It's a 1/3, so although this can't attack, when this blocks other creatures, this will actually do damage to them because it has the 1 power to it, which you don't see on very many walls. This card basically allows you to search for pretty much any card in your deck. Unfortunately, Shield Wall Sentinel can't grab Valakut Invoker because Valakut Invoker himself is not a defender. But what you can do is you can Shield Wall Sentinel for Drift of Phantasms, discard Drift of Phantasms, and then grab Valakut. So makes it a little more difficult to dig up, but you still can do it. There is a way around that. But these guys we're running 4 of, primarily just because they're also just really good blockers. Again, they do damage to creatures. So next up, we're running 1 Vivian's Grizzly for a green and 2 colorless. And then for a green and 3 colorless, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put that card into your hand, put it at the bottom of your library. So this card's actually insane because you can also go infinite with this as well, to grab whatever you need. So if you have your Axebane now and you're able to create infinite mana, but you can't find your Valakut any other way, this is another card that allows you to find Valakut, because it allows you to just basically look at every card in your deck. And the other cool thing is that when you do look at that card, you just put it at the bottom of your library, you don't have to discard it. So you can't mill yourself with this card, which makes it extremely strong. Next up, we have 3 copies of Winding Way. For 2 mana, choose creature or land, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put all cards of a chosen type revealed this way into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You're pretty much always going to be choosing creatures with this deck. Your creatures create so much mana, they're basically lands themselves. With that being said, this deck's only running 15 lands. Alright, so next up we have Lead the Stampede. Basically the same thing. For 3 mana, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of creature cards from among them and reveal those cards and put them into your hand. So this is basically just so you could draw all your walls. We're running 4 Lead the Stampedes. The reason why we're running more Lead the Stampedes than Winding Ways is because unfortunately, 1, Winding Way doesn't grab you as many creatures, and 2, Winding Way puts creatures in the graveyard, which sucks. Okay, so next up is the meat of the deck. Everything else that we're going to be looking at are all of our other defenders that basically just make mana. So for example, we have Cerulean Caretaker here for 1 green mana. This is a turn 1 card, defender. Tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. And we're playing 4 Quirion Rangers. Hello again, this is Editing Joel that's significantly less enthusiastic several hours in the future. I forgot to explain what Quirion Ranger does. It allows you to return a target force to your hand to untap a target creature. So this is basically just another untap effect in the deck. So if you tap a wall for a lot of mana, you can return a force to your hand, untap that wall, and then you can tap it again for even more mana. So that's the reason why Quirion Ranger's in the deck. I forgot to talk about earlier, and I'm sorry. Okay, bye. So next up is a Wall of Roots for green and colorless. This is a 0/5. Put a -0/-1 counter on Wall of Roots. Add a green to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Use this ability only once per turn. So this card's a little bit slower than some of our other mana generators, but it still adds an additional mana. And you can activate it 5 times before Wall of Roots dies. This has 5 toughness, and if you're putting a -0, -1 counter on it, when you activate the first time, it'll now be a 0/4. When you activate a second time, it'll be a 0/3. And then once it's a 0/0, this creature will then go to the graveyard. But throughout the game, it will generate you 5 mana, which is nice. So we're only running 2 of those though. So next up, we have Overgrown Battlement, which also has Defender. Add green to your mana pool for each creature with Defender you control. Now, this card can add infinite mana as well. These are basically just bad Axebanes because they only create green mana. If you have other sources on the field, which you will, that can create other colors of mana, then you can use this instead of Axebane. But unfortunately, you can't transmute for this with Drifted Phantasms, and then like I said, it only creates green mana, so if you actually need to cast your Invoker, you can't, because Invoker costs red mana. But all in all, this is basically just 4 additional copies of Axebane. And next up, we have 1 copy of Orochi Leafcaller. For a green mana, you could add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this is a card that does work well with Overgrown Battlement, right? So as long as you have 1 other wall on the field, and if this has Freed from the Real on it, you can generate 3 green mana by tapping this. You can use 1 of the green mana to turn it into a blue mana to add a blue to your mana field, and you can use that blue to then untap Overgrown Battlement, and then you are once again at 1 mana. And then you can just do this infinitely and activate this infinitely. So it's a little bit more of a clunkier version of the combo, but as long as it gets you there, that's all that matters. And then next up, we have Mole Drifter. This card is just a good card, right? For 3 mana, you could just draw 2 cards. It's a flyer, is 2/2. I mean, it's just Muldrifter. It's just a good card in Pauper. And then finally, we have Reaping the Graves. For a black and 2 colorless, this is the only black card in the deck. At instant speed, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So basically, what you can do with this is if your opponent's killed a couple of your things, what you can do is you can maybe cast Lead the Stampede, get a bunch of walls in hand, cast a bunch of walls, and then generate a black mana to then play Reaping of the Graves for like 4 or 5, and you can grab all of your combo pieces back from your graveyard and put them back into your hand, assuming they don't exile your graveyard, but that's another conversation for another time. And now we're going into land. We are running... nobody saw that. Next up, we have Pulse of Marasa. 3 mana, return target creature or land card from graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. You can fetch this card with Drift of Phantasms if one of your combo pieces dies or gets countered. So you can put it back into your hand, and you also gain 6 life, which is also just good against burn. And we are running 2 of these. Okay, so next up is the land. This deck runs 2 islands, and then we are running shit. And then we're also running 4 Jati Offshoots. So Jati Offshoot is 1 green mana defender with landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So what landfall means that anytime a land enters the field under your control. So when you play a land for turn, you'll gain 1 life. And this is also really good with Korean Ranger, because a lot of times you're just, you know, bouncing lands with Korean Ranger to untap your creatures. So yeah, I mean, that's just a really good card. It helps mitigate your life total against aggro decks and burn decks and whatnot. This is basically a target for lightning bolt instead of your face, which is always a good thing. Okay, let me just double check real quick. Make sure there's not anything else hiding in here that I don't know about. So this deck's running 2 islands. It's running 1 gingerbread cabin, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other forests. So when gingerbread cabin enters the battlefield untapped, you create a food token, which if you pay 2 mana, you could sacrifice the artifact and gain 3 life. So we're going to be running 8 forest. And then finally, we have a Broker's Hideout. When Broker's Hideout enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic forest, plains, or island, put that card on battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library, you gain 1 life. So now let's go ahead and talk sideboard. So the first one we have here is Scattershot Archer for 1 green mana. You could tap this. Scattershot Archer deals 1 damage to each creature with flying. So this card's really, really good against fairies. Next up, we have Gorilla Shaman. So this card's really good, especially because we can create infinite mana. When you activate it, you have to pay 1, and then you have to pay 2 in order to equal 1x. And so if you were to pay the 3 mana to activate this ability, you can then destroy an artifact that costs 1 mana. So you would have to pay 5 mana in order to destroy something with converted mana cost 2, and then you have to pay 7 mana to destroy something with converted mana cost 3, and so forth. But this deck creates infinite mana, so it doesn't matter. Next up, we have Tamio's Safekeeping. It's an instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end turn, and you gain 2 life. So if you are playing against a burn deck, this card comes in to protect your creatures. Next up, we have Dispel. Dispel is counter target instant spell, so in case you do go to cast your Invoker and your opponent has a counter spell up, you can dispel their counter spell and then they will feel sad. Next up, we have Prohibit with Kicker 2. Counter target spell if its converted mana cost is 2 or less. If you pay the kicker cost, counter that spell if its converted mana cost is 4 or less instead. So obviously this is just another counter. For 2 mana, you can counter a counter spell, but for 4 mana, you can counter some other stuff. So I mean, that's basically all it is. We're running 4 Deglammers. For green and colorless, choose target artifact or enchantment. Its owner shuffles it into his or her library. And then finally, we have 2 Moment's Peace. Prevent all combat damage will be dealt this turn, and you can flashback it for 3. So this is a fog effect. What that basically means that when your opponent goes to attack, you basically play this, and then it stops combat damage from happening. And then flashback means that when this card's in your graveyard, you could pay the 3 mana to flash it back and then exile it. And then you basically just cast it from your graveyard. So that is Walls combo for Pauper. Now I may have not even explained every single interaction in perfection. Like I said, the Discord for this deck is going to be down in the description below. Walls Combo has a very devoted community to just trying to make this deck better, and this is not the only iteration of this deck, so go ahead and check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, I have other deck techs down below where we unbox other decks. Last week we did Mono Blue Fairies, and next week I think I'm going to be doing Affinity, so go ahead and press the subscribe button if you're interested in that content. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and let me know down below. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.